Hey, family, blessed love, blessed love. We are here live, um, getting ready for some beautiful family time. So we're gonna take a brief moment to invite y'all to come on in the room.
Come on in the room.
Come on in the room. I know my special guest know all about that. I know where he's from. He's gonna tell us. I'm gonna let him speak for himself today, though. He's quite articulate and very capable of speaking for himself. You know. But he
uh,
also been training some cubs in the bush who can also speak on
whoa,
his behalf if
whoa.
necessary. All right, so that's what we're talking about. Um, just like and share the video. This will live in your on your platforms on YouTube, and Facebook, and everything. We didn't give you much notice that we'll be coming on. However, we're recording this for WRFC Radio, so just gonna invite you all to invite some family to let's have some story times. When I say come on in the room, I'm talking about for real. Come on in the room and get cozy. Let's get comfortable with ourselves, being ourselves again, right? And I have the honor, and it's truly an honor to have with us someone who not only I have great respect for, but even and what I learned from him, I can say this in this moment is that his work is so valuable to me that sometimes I think there's a little fear there of making it known to the world in the way that I like to pick up our people because of how strategically crucial at this stage of our journey the work of healing oppression wounds is. The work of warrior healer builder, the work of Baba Wakesa Olatunji Matsumoto. I hope I got the right
You
middle name
got
right.
absolutely right.
It's powerful, and maybe we can get into a little bit of that when I mentioned about finding those emotions that are associated with our thoughts and our feelings and naming them and again taking back our power. And that's one of the great contributions and the reason why I say what I say of that Baba Wakesa Mazumoyo. Uh, I know him as a father. I know him as a storyteller. I know him as a psychologist. I don't know if I gotta find another word, but for now we can use psychologist in the highest sense.
Storyologist. That's my term.
I say a storyologist. I say I'm talking about in the tradition of
Yes.
Amos Wilson and
Yes.
Nana Bafour and all those people who study our people from a space of loving our people and have looked into our situation from the inside out. And through the love they have provided for us remedies to the situation, remedies, medicine. I know him as a warrior, a healer, and a builder. And as our creator is our witness, maybe at least twice a day when I have the opportunity to have conversation with people anywhere I am on God's green earth, I bring up his work, the work of him and his family. Um, Again, what I always term or refer to as healing oppression wounds, because as we're having these conversations globally about the state of our people, about the state of the world, even about our own, starting with our own selves, just about how we feel and how our health is, how we're interacting with ourselves and then our environment. There's something that I can draw from that I've learned through Baba Wakesa and Mama Fia and their family that I can share as a very practical point of reference to say, like, okay, well, let's look at this from this standpoint. So I can. It just wouldn't be appropriate right now because of our time. I can go on for a long time talking about the effect that this work has had on me as an individual, as a being, on my family and our community. So welcome again. to the airways on WRFG. You're no stranger to the airways. Baba Wakesa Mazumoyo. Thank you for joining us on the Ancestral Rock.
So glad to be here, my brother. So glad. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate the work that you have done for as long as I've known you, and the work that you continue to do for our people, for your family, and for our people wherever you go. So it is a pleasure, and I always will answer your call.
I say, brother. I say. One of the things that, as I was preparing for our conversation early this morning, one of the things I was reflecting on is a workshop I recently attended that you facilitated. You do this literally all over the world, you know, that focused on storytelling from the inside out. And as I was preparing for the program, I decided I was inspired to name this show, this conversation, the practical benefits, the practical value of proper storytelling. And to be honest, I inserted the practical there because there's a fear that many of us in our society, in this modern society, feel that our emotional reality, tapping into our spiritual reality, tapping into anything that does not say, maybe Democrat or Republican or US dollar, is very impractical. Right. It's like some extracurricular stuff,
Right.
So, so I'm grateful to have you on today because I know you make it very tangible. I don't know you as a person that's into fantasy. I do know you as a visionary though, I'm grateful to be able to make that distinction in these streets. But you were leading us in a powerful workshop, brother, and I want to just jump in right there. And as we go along, I know you will introduce yourself in many ways through this conversation. To locate this for maybe our children who will tap into some time capsule and hear this 2,000 years from now. We're now in the year 2024, the Gregorian calendar, and in the settler colony called the United States of America, located on the beautiful Turtle Island. There was just an election. There was just another election season, which has really stirred up a lot of thoughts and feelings and emotions amongst our people. And one of the things that specifically amongst African people, many African people who share their thoughts on social media and other public platforms, there's many things. One thing I want to point out, just in asking you the question, there's a lot of fear and also sadness in terms of disappointment in how things turned out. And that has caused many of us, to lament about the past, or to also, for some people, to say, well, I guess we're going back to the plantation. So with that backdrop, which is a very broad one, I know. With that backdrop, I remember being in a conversation with you just last week where you were making reference to Black Wall Street. And you were making reference to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And you were admonishing those of us who were in the room to never again call it a massacre. And we went from there into a whole psychological study of how words work, how energy works, So I just want to stop there and just ask you to kind of start there in terms of, first, as a broad concept, what is meant by storytelling from the inside out?
Storytelling from the inside out means it acknowledges that we have been conditioned. Part of our oppression is not just external. we all know that there's also mental side. There's also mental oppression. Many people have talked about it, Amos, Naeem, and everybody. Often, and so one aspect of what we call injected oppression is our telling our own story as if we're occupied by the enemy. That is, we'll tell it from their perspective, and or and so that's what we mean by learning how to heal ourselves of that injected script. We call it countering injected racial scripts that influence our storytelling. CIRS. Okay. Countering the injected racial scripts that influence our storytelling. It is so important because when we can have our own voice and be with each other, that is the time when the oppressor needs to be out of the room. Okay. And often we don't know how, based on our socialization and raising, the oppressor comes in the room through our stories and out of our own mouths. Okay. And that's what we have to counter and replace with storytelling from the inside out. And but before I get into that, because I want to get into, I think we talked about 4 or 5 of them the other night. I don't know whether we're going to have time for all of that, but we'll go where we can go. And I'll come back from Tulsa, but something that you said earlier, the tone that you set, saying we just came out of this election. And folks are dealing with, as you said, accurately, a lot of fear, a lot of sadness, a lot of disappointment, and some finger pointing and all of that goes with it. And some surrender, like, oh, well, guess we're going back to the plantation. It's important that when people called me and asked me about, or said what's happening or what's next and whatever, I said it's 1877. And they're like, what's that? I said 1877 was the end of Reconstruction. If you know anything about our history, from 1865 to 1877, it was a period where federal troops, Black soldiers particularly, were stationed in the southern states, and Africans were elected to office. Africans were becoming mayors, and we were moving on up, coming out of our condition, and we were working our butts off as well. Now, what happened though is the Republican and Democratic Party in 1877 got together and said, you know what, we need to make America great again. And that meant oppressing African people overtly, and regardless of whatever rules of law, et cetera, et cetera. And that was 1877. Now, for us, Reconstruction, our version of Reconstruction, ended for real in 2000. It ended with the hanging chads. Okay. Now this will lead to storytelling. It ended with the hanging chads. You remember, some of the people remember the election of 2000 and the hanging chads. And after that, 2005, you had Katrina. And after that, Trayvon. And in a sense of our forward movement as a people in this country was being opposed tremendously. The current had shifted. Okay. And so that was a time to wake up. Okay. That was a time to, like, wait a minute. There's a serious shift. There always had been an opposition, to our moving forward, the Baki case and all stuff like that. But about 2000, it began to be more the norm. And so here's what we did. Europeans projected an illusion that our progress was continuing, and we supplied the matching delusion. Now here's important to understand the distinction. An illusion is a projected fake image designed to deceive. Now, it can be like a magician to deceive for fun. I'll pull a rabbit out of a hat. I'll make something disappear. Poof. It's an illusion designed to deceive. Or it could be more malevolent, that is more destructive in its intent. But still, it's an illusion that's a projected fake image. A delusion is something else. A delusion is a denial of reality. right? A delusion is something that I create because I'm fearful of facing reality. Now, that's Amos Wilson. If you look at falsification of African consciousness, one of the symptoms of oppressed people is delusion, holding on to a belief in spite of reality. You see, in an illusion, if I think you pulled the rabbit out of your hat, and then I turn around and I see that you had it pinned to you or some other way, then the reality breaks the illusion. If I see a mirage and I say that's water, when I pick it up and put it in my mouth, it's like, excuse me, this is not water. Reality pushes it. But what happens when we are denying the reality and we create a story? All right, because we have to create a story. Because if I just deny reality, it's like pushing something down because I don't want it to come up. Well, just the fact that I'm consciously pushing it down has me realize that it's there. Now, instead, we can create a story. All right, and here's a dynamic of oppression. Europeans didn't want in 2000 for us or today for us to say, wait a minute, hold up, all jig is up. Let's begin to deal with what really is going on and push back and all of that. No, they projected an illusion, Obama. Okay, and this is not against Obama or for Obama. I'm talking about the dynamic of oppression because he wasn't the only one. So they projected this that says things are better. The country is continue to move forward. See, there can be a black president. All right. So that was a fake image, an illusion designed to deceive. We then, in spite of the reality, decide that we're going to craft a delusion, and we will tell ourselves, yes, in spite of reality, right? That it is the country is still moving in spite of Katrina, in spite of Trayvon Martin, in spite of the vigilantes, all of that. So what's really required at the psychological and storytelling level is that we stop the delusion illusion dance. You see, if it's just an illusion, reality will push against it, will break our minds free. When we supply the matching delusion, then that dance can go on and on and on until we're no more. And so it's important that we stop this. And this is where Amos comes in and connects to what you just said. And that is the root of delusion is fear. All right. And our people are more fearful now than when we were being lynched. And the reason for that is we're more fragmented now. Okay. We have less a sense of each other and connection and identity than we did in 1877. And we're going to need to return to that. And so part of that, in order for us to have movements, the work that we do, that we begin to, okay, we got to move, we got to do this, we got to organize. It's important that does not follow the delusionary track. And it's important that the stories that we tell ourselves that shape the actions that we take are not contaminated by these scripts that we talked about the other night. Okay, so I just wanted to make that joining a connection.
I appreciate it, and true to classic Baba Wakeso form, you're opening up a million rabbit holes for us to jump into because it's so rich, because it's so practical. I mean, as you were talking, when you talked about the ending the illusion dance, it's a powerful analogy. It begs the question: well, who playing the music? You know, who control? You know, who? How do we stop the dance? What dances do we know? How do we know we dancing? And then even as you mentioned, you know, the whole. I mean, again, the aspect of the delusion as it relates to this society, as it relates to the politics. How do we really get to see what is the reality versus something else? Because there's many people that say, well, reality is relative.
Now we're not going to let ourselves see the reality for as long as we think that we are incapable of handling the reality. See, that's the part that Amos was talking about. That's the psychological. When I'm fearful, meaning I don't believe that I'm capable and I'm adequate. This is why going back to 1877 is so important. Our people didn't melt as Jim Crow, convict leasing, and all of that rushed forward. We didn't just say, "Oh, whatever." We organized and galvanized. Some people know Zora Neale Hurston. They don't know that her father, who was the mayor and on this, there, he and two other brothers had been in an adjoining town because theirs hadn't been created, and they were on a mixed city council. They left their mixed race city council to found Eatonville, an all black town. Okay. All right. And over again, what we were doing was organizing by family for each other, prioritize that. So one of the practical things that people want to do, some things is like, wait a minute, we don't have time to play with various kinds of identities right now. Okay. Let us get clear on our core identity and organize economically, politically, and every other way around that, and do the healing where our identity has been compromised or confused. That we have to move that out of the way because we don't have time to play with that. Barbara Clark told us clearly, we have temporary alliances, but we have no friends. Okay, and very often we're trying to identify with everybody and with everything. All right, and that's just part of the ploy. And so on a very practical level, if we look, because coming out of 1877, 20 years later, we're in Tulsa buying 40 acres and designating it specifically for Black people, specifically for African people. We're asking people to come west because we don't get respect and justice where we are. Ida B. Wells told after we formed the People's Grocery Store there. That is, we coming out of captivity, we went to the white grocery store because that was the only one that was there. All that time, we're saving our money and creating a cooperative. We opened the People's Grocery Store and defended militarily because white folks wanted to ramsack it. But after the mob violence, white mob violence, she said to everybody two things. First, a Winchester deserves a honored place in everybody's home, and go west, as into Tulsa, so because you're not going to get justice here. The advertisements from Tulsa, the first line that invited us to come says what? Bring your Winchester, right? And so we began to go, and not just there are 50 different towns, Black towns that were started in Oklahoma alone. Okay. Wait a minute, I'm not sure about that. A total of 50. There are many in Oklahoma. Bowley still exists, and a number of those. Okay. The point is, we looked for places that we could have our own mini sovereignty, okay, where we organized ourselves. And the delusion that we have is, well, there's just some old white people and they're dying off and they're just stuck in their ways, or just some poor white people. And soon as they die, and we can marry enough white folks that it won't matter. And I'm sorry, right? Mama, remember, Ani laid it to us very clearly. If you understand the European Asili, and then you have a proper understanding about history, then you can predict, you can, one, know what's going on in terms of reality. But you see, often we focus too much on them and not enough on building our power and our power centers, okay? And believe it or not, although it seems like it's not practical, the story precedes the revolution. Mm-hmm. Whether you're talking about a revolution as in just a personal change and I'm going to change a habit, or family story change, the story precedes the revolution. And so it's critical. Go ahead.
Sorry, there's a delay. I didn't mean to cut you. You just reminded me of when the great Gil Scott Heron, he was asked what he meant by the revolution will not be televised. And this is probably even more relative now than it was when he was talking. He said, but what you see on TV, somebody must have asked him that. I wasn't there. My imagination telling me somebody must have challenged him to say, well, we'll be seeing stuff on TV, brother. We'll be seeing, We seeing what? We seeing this? He said, well, we seen on TV is skirmishes.
Right.
But the revolution that I'm talking about happens at the midnight hour when we change our minds
That's right.
and we decide. So what we seeing, then we'll see the fruit of all of that.
Right.
So I just made reference to that because what you just said seemed like you're saying the same thing.
Yes.
I
That's
want to
right.
ask you something about the delusion though.
Okay.
This is one of the rabbit hole. I kind of held myself back. However, we go in there. Let's go there.
Oh, let's go there.
That's good. So in my mind, one of the delusions is that we are American. And I know that is so loaded in terms of etymology and all these kind of things. So with respect to the Moors and everyone else who will give you another breakdown in that we are part and parcel of this system, this settler colony system known as United States of America.
Yeah.
And it what complicates it, and I'm putting this out there so you can help us talk through this. What complicates it is the fact that we have ancestors in our family
Yeah.
who did believe
Yeah.
that we had a chance to be that. And so they gave their life on the battlefields in Korea and Vietnam and in Iraq. And you know what I'm saying? I know many of them were just venerated on last Monday, Veterans Day.
That's
We
right.
have we have family members who did so much hard work, so much courageous work in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s in the name of the civil rights movement, who
Yes.
said, well, we're gonna get voting rights, we're gonna get this. So there's the question of, for instance, even when you're just dealing with voting, the immediate response is, well, if voting really didn't matter, then they wouldn't be suppressing us so much, and all this
Right.
kind of stuff. But if this wasn't our land, then why would our people fight for it? That kind of thing.
Well,
So help us out with that.
Europe is wonderful. First of all, the first thing that came to mind when you said about Americans and citizens is Malcolm. He made it plain. That's what I love about Malcolm. He said a cat can have kittens in an oven, but does that make them biscuits? I'll repeat it. If a cat crawls up into an oven, an old oven, and has kittens there, does that make them biscuits? He also said, if you're invited to dinner and you're seated along with others at the table and everybody is served but you, are you a diner? See, Malcolm would make it plain. So that's the first thing that came to mind, that we really need to deal with that and the reality of it. The other that came to mind is strategy and how often we ignore what our ancestors' strategies were. Okay. And we'll take their action and we'll let somebody else define what it meant and what they meant by it. For example, talking about fighting, Africans fought in the so-called Civil War. Africans didn't fight to be Americans in the Civil War. Africans fought for our freedom. Okay. And not only fought for it, Africans won it. You see, just a little bit here, after a little history. The North had no inclination of freeing African people and didn't. In fact, when their soldiers first got to the plantations, they would find Africans free and they would put us back into captivity if they could. You see, but after the first year of the war, General Ben Butler went to see Lincoln and had a conversation with him. He said, Lincoln, I don't know what you've been doing. I don't know what you've been drinking or smoking or something, but the North is losing the war. We have lost every single major battle this year. But there stands in waiting a black force, waiting to rush on stage to save us. And Secretary of State Seward, excuse me, Ben, we can't say that because history would make much of the fact. Ross Kofi would be inspired by the fact that we white folks had to extend our hand to African folks. So that's why they said, Ben, you go and win one major battle, and then we will issue an Emancipation Proclamation so that you can have your black help. And that's why that conversation went on in September. The Emancipation Proclamation, January 31st. All right, and in the interim, there was a battle, and 10,000 Confederate soldiers died. 12,000 Union soldiers. They said that's good enough. Now, my point is this: the North was losing the war when it became clear that they were not conscious agents for putting us back into captivity. When our fighting with them, not for them, and not for America, we were fighting for our freedom. When that became clear, then we transferred our labor and our genius and our courage, and we were the deciding factor in the defeating the South. Now, so here that's connected to your when we gonna soldier up and we're gonna become Americans. No, we were clearly fighting for our freedom. When we, even if you go to the Korean War and other wars, all right, what we're fighting for there is we really hoping that that would mean more justice for us back here. Okay. So if somebody get confused and to say, oh, well, we were fighting because we were really, really identifying with American and we know Americans, we were citizens and they loved us. And so we're going to defend it. No, we literally were fighting there so that we would have more room. We also were fighting so that we would have more skill on how to fight. And so when in the First World War, when the brothers were not allowed to do military combat, they could do service support in the U.S. military. But France said, I'll take anybody because we need some help. And Africans went there and they were so powerful, so bad that their enemies, the Germans, called them the Harlem Hellfighters. Okay. Now what's the connection? Those same Harlem Hellfighters come back home, form the African Blood Brotherhood. And so when you talk about Tulsa and when you talk about Rosewood and when you talk about other places, they often were the people who were skilled and ready to fight. Okay.
That's right.
When you talk about the Deacons for Defense, if you watch the HBO movie on it, it's watered down, but still there's some good pieces there. One of the first things that the brother asks when he's organizing brothers is, which one of you have ever killed a white man? Because he understood the psychological programming that you had to go through. All right. And so that group of men who had been used to using guns were key for our quote unquote civil rights movement activity. All right. And I'm just saying it's important for somebody now to tell me, oh, well, thank you for your service. And what's the problem is we're not telling our story from the inside out. We're letting other folks says, oh, he was a veteran, so whatever. Now, again, we're fighting so that we can have a job. We're fighting so that we can have a house. We're fighting so that we can have GI benefits. It's the same reason we were voting. One of my favorite teachers is Septima Clark. I didn't get a chance to meet her personally. I just have heard stories and stories. And actually, Asa Hilliard tells one of the best stories of her. Because he interviewed her, he was able to talk to her, and he was trying to find out her secret methods because she was so successful in teaching Black people to read, and he wanted to know what was her method. He said, I was looking for her to say some seek and say, and whatever varies. She looked at him kind of funny and says, son, I points to the goal. I tell them, you are learning to decode words so you can learn to read, so you can read the Mississippi Constitution, so you can get these people off your back. Okay. Now, whenever any particular action is not achieving that, then Septima Clark would do something different. And to have us locked in, and this is where the delusionary part goes in. Okay. That is to have people redefine what that was, right? We were strategic and we did whatever we needed to do in order to expand our territory. And I'm not talking about some fanciful freedom or liberty that's just in our imagination. We're talking about that we expand the territory, we push the ceiling higher to give us more space so that it pushes back on police brutality. It pushes back on not having enough money. It literally expands our territory, and we use whatever means necessary to do that, and not just whichever, all the means necessary to do that. All right. And when we were forming the Deacons for Defense and or other military, paramilitary organizations, we weren't talking about it. You can't right now. You can't find brothers who were part of the Deacons for Defense because folks won't tell you because it's still against the damn law for what they participated in. That is supporting Black people against white military aggression. So the point is, we need to understand what our people were doing and then retell the story about it. Now that leads me to Tulsa, if you're ready to go there.
Yeah, let me just take a pause and say you're tuning into WRFD Atlanta, 89.3 on the FM dial. I want to greet all of you joining us on Facebook and YouTube and the different platforms. Continue to like and share the video, share the love. This is a very practical way of doing what our people have always done, which is be community. There was a study done recently, a graph that showed it's a graph that's like a moving graph that show where people spent the majority of their time from the 1950s all the way to 2024. And suffice it to say, if there's any truth to that, which I don't doubt that there is, at least a grain of truth to it, most of us are spending a lot of time online, even more than with family and friends, and much less, in religious institutions and all that. We're speaking with storyologists, lover of our people, warrior, healer, builder, Baba, comrade, DJ. And part of the thing I want to tell you, he was scheduled to be the guest DJ today, but just based on the fact of our travels and everything, we're going to have to come back to that. He almost took my job one time. If he wanted it, he probably could have got it. He came up there guest DJing. And so much more. Baba Wakesa Olatunji Mazumoyo. Well, coming up on his 70th birthday celebration, which is something that I was so happy to see for so many reasons, mainly because I know Baba Wakesa is not somebody who toots his own horn, so to speak, And he even has mentioned to some of us that he's never had a birthday celebration as the eldest sibling and all that. He always would be taking care of others. Before we go to Tulsa, Baba, I want to ask you a little bit more about your personal story.
Okay.
I know you're coming from North Carolina, and I know that in all the different times I've been able to sit with you, whether it's in a workshop or we just reasoning personally about life or whatever, you always reference stories from your upbringing as points of reference what shape your consciousness. So take us to North Carolina for a minute. Take us to the early days. What do you feel inspired to share today with?
Oh, well, it's great because one of the things that I'm having a party, as you said, on Saturday, and one of the things, an ebook, a verbal, actually, audio book, which for entitled Red Gold. Everybody who comes will have access to that, and it will be, printed in January. But right now, I wanted people to have access to it, and it is a story of North Carolina, and in it, I start with how much time we got. What we dealing with?
We got about 30 minutes.
Okay, so let me pull it up, and I'm gonna use that as a taking off point. Okay, of some of that. So it's was created out of a course called Falsification of African Consciousness, named after Amos Wilson's book, and in that we have our students, adults and young people, really go back and deal with our psychology. And so for this class, we used a great writer, Aikwe Amar, and in his guide. that is, he created a book called The Healers. And in it, there's a character called Arba Jeshua. And Arba Jeshua is talking in this scene, talking to Densu, who is an apprentice to the, will become an apprentice to the healer, the main healer in the book, Damfo. And she's saying, here is what was going on with her. And she was really depressed and all that. And Damfu took her through a process, and she went through this process, 8 steps, and she was explaining it to him. And as I was listening to her, I said, what? I said, go ahead on Aikwe, because what he's doing is laying out an 8-step healing option for us. And so I said to the students, I said, let's follow Arba Jeshua's 8 and see if that can provide some resolution for issues that we're dealing with. All right. And I said, so what I will do is also do the same thing. And out of that comes red gold. The North Carolina nights had long overtaken the day, and the bitter cold forced us to move our anvils from under the old pecan tree inside. Son, I'll carry the anvils. You grab the ball peen hammers. Okay, I'll take the screwdrivers and chisels. Be careful, those chisels are sharp. Dad brought the buckets for the brass, the barrels for the steel, and the red gold. These replaced our kitchen table, and the forged scissors replaced knives for snipping the brass from charred wires. Dad hung one of those green Korean War wool army blankets to keep the dust from overtaking the rest of our modest home. Our kitchen had morphed into our workshop. Cold weather wasn't about to stop Getty's salvage. This business was more than a way for us to make money. His starch uniforms would be delivered on Wednesdays. The dark blue pants were matched with a solid blue shirt. On each was a label. It read Getty. That's what people called him, Getty or Mr. Getty. It was a way for him to be his own man. He had no boss. Sometimes he even hired people we didn't need rather than to give them a handout. He wanted them to keep their dignity. He and my mother had started this business together. Unfortunately, they didn't stay together. Last year, she moved away, taking me to Brooklyn with her. This year, I was with Dad. And tonight, like many nights, it was just me and him, pounding, screwing, chiseling, snipping in search of the red gold. It was the most profitable of the metals we recycled. We worked, of course, with steel and tin, aluminum, die cast, and we worked with copper. Copper was the red gold. While chiseling the copper from the armatures required the most skill, my favorites were the generators and starter cylinders. After removing the armature, bam, 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 I pounded, hitting the 2 screws on opposite sides of the steel cylinders. Dad could loosen them with 1 hit, bam. My smaller hammer and arms required many more tries. I positioned it solidly on my anvil again, and I hit it as hard as I could, bam, then reached for the flat-headed screwdriver. It took both hands to release the screws, and the wad of red gold tightly wound around the metal flanges. Yes, I said. I must have been 6 years old, and the joy of accomplishment filled me each time I chunked the red gold into the barrel. Dad's approving smile would say, "That's my boy." It was dirty work, but it didn't feel like work and in no way like dirt. It felt like love, and I felt powerful. The weekends were a whole different story. On Saturday mornings, I'd wake up early at my Aunt Nell's house on Wilmington Road. She and my Uncle Ballard had a black and white television set. My slightly older cousins, Priscilla and Jean, would watch cartoons with me and the Lone Ranger. And just before heading outside, Tarzan. Once outside, I'd grab a low-hanging branch, swinging and belting out a Tarzan-like yodel to strike fear into my imaginary opponents. For that moment, I was Tarzan, strong, smart, a friend and a protector to the animals that only he or I could talk to. He had Cheetah and the beautiful Jane. Then there were those bumbling, idiotic natives who weren't even worthy adversaries. My yell and yodel was that of the king of the jungle, and I didn't want to be anything like those who look most like me. I didn't think of those things then. I was just having fun on a Saturday morning. I didn't know the abuse, the psychological abuse, or the false ideas that were being implanted and induced. One day, walking to school, another black student called me, "Yo, black." And before he could get from the B in black to the K, we were throwing punches and rolling on the ground. Mission accomplished. Tarzan's producers must have celebrated. The terrifying scent of their century-old abuse mingled with innocent media-induced menticide convinced me to feel ashamed of the African part of me, to break apart, way apart from the African part of me. I was to become the other, the alien script in my own history, alien wound in me. Though I couldn't identify the commander, their orders were clear: control this African part or kill it. Is that what I was trying to do when I punched my schoolmate who hurled my Africanness at me? I'll stop it there.
Yes, indeed. You're hearing the voice of Baba Wakesa Matsumoyo of Aya Educational Institute, co-founder of Aya Educational Institute, Healing Oppression Wounds, Warrior Healer Building. I just, for me, all of them is like, I know it's all part of one reality. I just give them all, they all have their place as institutions. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I won't say separate from anything else, but just in their function. You're tuned into the Ancestral Rock family, and as we said earlier, our special guest is having a special celebration for his Earth Day coming up, his 70th Earth Day. We're grateful that you're still with us here in this flesh, brother. We know you always will be with us regardless. We know how energy works, and we're grateful to see you getting your flowers and celebrated by the community that you have poured into so deeply. Um, Before we go to Tulsa, let's just talk a little bit about the celebration that's taking place. And I see that, among other things, it will be in many ways a fundraiser, FUN and FUND. All right, for to continue the powerful works that you and your family are doing.
Indeed. So we're going to have dinner, and so we'll eat and we'll have some reflection and some words. Mama Fears organized this tremendously. Mama Fears, the love of my life. For those of you who are just learning about me, we've been joined at the hip for 38 years, and it's still wonderful. And so so she's really taken charge of this for me. And so we have different parts that she's organized into several parts, and we'll have people, talking about those different parts of my life. The Gump. So for 10 years, I was in Montgomery. That's where I met her. And so that was a formative kind of period. We have an early period. So some of my family members are coming in from out of town, some cousins in them, sisters and brothers and cousins in them.
That's right.
I don't, all my aunts, all my mother and father and their siblings have all passed. And so I got a few older cousins, and we coming together. And so it's a beautiful family part. Then there's the Gump part, and then there's the Black Film Project is a major project that we did, there. We come to Atlanta, we do WHB. So different parts and different people. Now, it also will be celebrated here in the metro area, Clarkston Community Center. It also will be celebrated online. Okay, so people can tune in, and people will be tuning in from all around the country and out of the country who they registered for that. And so we're gonna have testimonials, but every 30, we're breaking it into 30-minute segments, okay? Mm-hmm. Because this cannot be a sit down and bore yourself to death. You said I was a DJ. I'm also a dancer. Okay. There you go. My way to health. And you best to believe the DJ's job is easy because I've curated the list, right? and so there will be 10 minutes of talking about a particular area, 10 minutes of people coming up and giving any well wishes they want to give and any memories, and then both online and face to face, and then 10 minutes of dancing. And we'll do that again every 30 minutes. And this is before then the show enough party throwdown, and that is when Masiki scales at 9 o'clock in the Common Ground Collective, and then we'll shift it. And so we also recognize that some people will come to one part, maybe not stay the whole time, because we're going to start at 6:30. That's when dinner's going to be served, and we don't finish until 11 o'clock. Okay, but it's a whole movement piece that folk can get into. I certainly would love for you to, you're invited. Come the I think we got this. You can find how to get there. I guess I can give you my email address or my telephone number. Should I do that? I don't know the rule.
Please do, or any website, any way that people can tap in.
If you go to Facebook and type Wekesa is 70. Or Wekesa is 70. Wekesa means Wekesa, and is 70 or 70th birthday celebration. If you're on Facebook, you'll find it there. You can also type on Instagram similarly, and that will come up. And you can also reach out Wekesa, that is Wekesa at gmail.com. That's the easiest one. Wekesa at Gmail. And I'll give you my phone number. I'll give you Mama Fia's phone number, 404-201-2356, 404-201-2356. And that number will follow me wherever I am. Mama Fia, 404-532-9958. And so we look to see you in the place if you're ready to party. Now, that party can be celebrating and sitting back and enjoying a wonderful community event and dinner. And also, if you want to, pat your foot or shake a tail feather, then you can do that as well. And then on the later set, you can just, throw down. And so I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to have lived a life of service. And I ain't nowhere close to dying. I don't plan to be. I mean, who knows about what happens tomorrow? But it's certainly not in my plan. And some of you know I've survived a major heart event. And I'm y'all. I've crafted another 30-year vision that gets me up. All right, and this is important because you want to talk about storytelling. One of the ways that oppression works with story is implied stories. Okay. Mm-hmm. And some people have heard of placebo effect, but not have heard of the nocebo effect. See, the placebo effect says, okay, I'm going to give you this, and this medicine is going to help you, even though there's nothing in it that will actually create that physiological mechanism of action. Okay. It's a water pill. Okay. It's white, just like the other one, or blue, just like the other one, but it doesn't have the active drug in it. And what happens is, in a significant percentage of the time, people who take that get better. Really want to make a distinction. They don't think they're better. They get better. You see, most people say, oh, they think they're better. No, they think their way to being better. That is, their thoughts create chemical reactions in their bodies equal to or better than that was stimulated by the drug with the active ingredient. All right. Now, if you know that, then you know how to use that. But also there's something that is extremely dangerous, and that is the nocebo. If I tell you that you're old, therefore you can expect to die. You can expect to have some prostate cancer. You can expect to have some diabetes. You can expect to so and so. Well, what do you expect for somebody your age? Okay. And what happens is, with this timeline, we're supposed to work for 40 years for other folks. And maybe by then, because by that time you should be 60 or 65, and then you kind of hold on Golden Pond or casinos and remotes until you just die, with your health declining going down the list. Well, I'm sorry, my great grandfather, we called him Papa down the road, wrote another story for me. He died at 103. I photographed him. I came home and brought people from my college to see him back to Fayetteville. My college was UNC Chapel Hill at the time. All right, to see and talk to Papa. When I got there to his house, this was in January, he wasn't there. It wasn't that he was gone. He had always in the field. He was breaking up the ground in January, okay, for what you have to do, okay? And he wasn't hunched over. It wasn't, I got an enlarged heart. I got angina. No, right? And I photographed him. One of my favorite photographs is of him when he was 99, okay? He went on and lived till he was 103, and he would be bent out of shape if I didn't do better than him. So my number is 105. Now, what's the significance of that? This is storytelling. Well, if I'm telling myself now at 70 that I want to live like Papa to 105, okay, which is again not, oh, I'm just crawling there. No, I'm talking about living there where you breaking up the ground, okay, at 99. So in order to do that, I have to tell myself a different story. I can't go along the story that's implied by the normal timeline. And so we have created Aya Tanzania. And thank goodness for Baoku and Evelyn, who are holding it down as directors on the ground to create one part will be a melanin research center. It's already a place of teaching math and science through agriculture, where we reproduce the work of George Washington Carver and Julius Nyerere. All right. Now, in order to bring that to fruition, it's going to take me 30 years. Okay, to have it sing like I want it to sing. What's the importance of that? I got to have something that will get me up like when I was 40, like when I was 45. Just like your children, you got to get them up. They got to get to college. They got to get here, got to get out of high school. They go, all right, my children are grown. They finding their own way. My job is to create a story, to create a vision of something that gets me up, so that I have to stay healthy for it, okay, to achieve it. All right. So anyway, that's just another implied story that goes along with us accepting the timelines that's touted again and again and again. All right. I had to interrupt my
that's real. And as we go, we are for the sake of time, as we go to Tulsa, I love what you just shared for many reasons. First of all, because it's so rich. And even as a bridge to take us to Tulsa, what you have continually shared is that there's a difference between delusion, not even just illusion, and also the reality, the truth, the reality of it. And as Amilcar Cabral said, when I was still a twinkle in my daddy's eye, in 1961 Tricontinental Congress, mask no difficulties, claim no easy victories, hide nothing from the masses of the people, tell no lies, expose lies when they're told. And at the same time, I'm hearing that. I'm hearing you when you're speaking. I'm hearing some of my favorite spiritual teachers. I'm hearing Reverend Ike.
Yeah.
Who had a bad rap when I was coming up, but in my adult life, I was able to understand what you're saying from another level. I'm hearing the teachings of Tahotep. So I'm just saying all that to say, this is what you are sharing with us is also a reminder. It's not, even though it's so revolutionary and evolutionary in its function, there's nothing new. And I've found great joy and actual success in teaching agriculture in that same way. Instead of this is some kind of new science you got to wrap your mind around and all this. No, it's remembering what's already been in us. You talk about St. Carver. St. Carver taught us this.
That's right.
And before that, many people, his grandmama, his great, that's just what it is. So, Baba, take us to Tulsa in that spirit of masking no difficulties and regaining, remembering our power.
Right.
remembering what it is that we have actually done and who we actually are.
All right. So one of the things, and I agree with everything you said, and Amilcar Cabral, that quote is one of my favorites. I quote it often, not as extensively as you. I'm gonna have to go, add some of the other pieces. I usually go to the shorter version, and I really appreciate your giving the fuller version of that. So Tulsa, Oklahoma, we often call Black Wall Street. And when we're teaching about Tulsa, and most times people we refer to it to try to inspire our people to start businesses and to believe what we can believe, that we can believe in ourselves. So we had, many Black businesses, and the dollar turned over many times. And unfortunately, we also then use it to chide our people. Okay. But we wanting to inspire and saying we can do this and we don't need to spend our money with white folks. So it slides but back in between inspiring us and chiding us. We also then tell the story of the Tulsa massacre. And that's where white people came in with their planes, and they, with their deputizing everyone in the National Guard, and just wiped out this Black community. That's how we tell that story. That's how others tell that story. When we're teaching it, one of the first things I say is we can no longer call that a massacre. That's not how we begin the story, and that's not what it was. And the students, adults and young people, are confused, and they're like, what do you mean? It was. And I said, no, we're going to tell the story the way it happened. We're going to use a strategy that I call BIB. We'll start with, what did we build? What did we build? Under duress. Why? Because we need to see our power and how we can build and did build, even though people don't like us, even though people ain't for us. How did we do that? If we don't know how we did it then, we won't know how to do it now. Okay. So understanding what we built and how did we build under duress. And then we'll talk about the invasion. That is, we built something worth invading by others. Now, that's not why we built it. We built it for us. And then there was their invasion. And the last alphabet is the B for battle. And that is, what was our battle? Did we battle it? Or did they just come in and wipe us out? Was it just a massacre? Were we just sitting ducks? Or did we fight? And so we got to learn about what we built, and about their invasion, and about our battle. And from then on, we forbid people from talking about it and calling it a massacre. Now, if you're in front of a Senate council and you're trying to get some money for that, yes, call it anything you want to call it. Okay, talk about how bad it was and how illegal it was and how immoral it was. But that is not the story we need to tell ourselves and our children about that. Every story, you ask any storyteller, and they'll tell you every story is not for every ear. Okay, there's a different purpose in the massacre story. If we're telling it as that, that's not a story for us. All right, that's a story for others for our objective. Okay, but for us, it's a BIB story. And when I begin to say that, many people, they don't know what and how we built under duress. They know of the invasion or some of it. They don't know our battling either. And it's important that we tell that way. Now, when we tell the story, and just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I certainly love for folks who are interested to learn more about it and take some of our courses for it. But it becomes an example of how our stories have been contaminated by others, right? And the first contamination or script, the injected racial script for storytelling, is MSO, morality in service of oppression. And this is straight out of Amos Wilson. You said nothing new under the sun. I'd gladly stand on the shoulders of so many and call their names every time I get a chance. So Amos talked about how morality has been taught to us in ways that serve oppression. So if you ask randomly 20 Black people to compare Malcolm and Martin with a simple question, which one was more moral? Then many times people will tell you that Martin was more moral than Malcolm. Okay, now they both were ministers, um, uh, and they both worked for our people, but one is considered more moral, and that is because King is known for turn the other cheek. Now he also said, if you ain't found something you willing to die for, you ain't fit to live. But that's not what he's known for, all right? But what he's known for, people would say he's more moral. And in many ways, when we don't want to tell the story of our battling white folks as we defended our homes, it's kind of better to say, well, we were the kind of honorable people, and the bad people kind of came in and they did something that was unjust and unconstitutional and all of that. And part of that is that we have a hard time talking about our power and our power challenging white domination, whether it's nice domination or nasty domination. That morality and service of oppression is a powerful piece that has us twisted. You also see it in the movie Harriet Tubman, when the character who plays her, I don't recommend that movie except for to analyze, how the storytelling has been contaminated. It was written by two Black women, wonderful women, had a lot of good things in it, and also highly contaminated in this way. And when she was, our mentor in the scene was to shoot the person who's been responsible for her and her parents' misery, who was chasing them, and in fact, who killed a person who was helping her. When she was in a place to blow his head off, she sermonized him. She gave him a lecture and threw the gun away. If you remember the movie Sankofa, no, not Sankofa, thank goodness. Hell no, not Sankofa. You remember the movie Serafina? Different than the play Serafina. When it was played by Whoopi Goldberg, she starts to sermonize about necktying, that is identifying traitors and dealing with them, and throws the gun away. Okay, that never was in the original piece at all. So many times our storytelling, even when we're telling a story about us, it's influenced negatively by morality in service of oppression. Right? Now, let me go back to Tulsa. The thing that when I'm working with anybody there, we go to is, how do you tell a story, our story, about a loss that's inspirational? When I give that assignment, people are confused because I said, you must tell the story and you cannot lie about it. Okay. Don't lie about what we built. Don't lie about the invasion, and don't lie about that we battled and we lost that battle. How do you tell a story about our losing the battle that's inspirational to those who listen to that story without minimizing our loss or lying about it? And most people, in fact, one student I never forget, he said, Bob Kessa, how do you tell a story about a loss that's inspirational? And my response was, that's why your parents chose to have you come to our Educational Institute, so that you can learn to do just that. My second response is, son, you already know how to do it. You just don't know how to do it applied to us. And then we watch 3-minute and 44-second trailer, right? This is a trailer from a movie. In the movie, this two groups of people are fighting. One group of people whoop the other group of people like they stole something. It's a trailer from the movie 300. And right. I told students, I said, so here are these folks, and the Persians are fighting them, and the Persians whooped them like they stole something. There's no bones about it. The Spartans lost. They were whooped, outmanned, outclassed, out whatever. I said, but when you finish listening to just this 3-minute and 44-second, you'll want to be Spartan. And so we analyze that. We analyze it. so that we begin to learn how is it we can watch that story and how it's told, and the injected oppression stops us from naturally applying it to ourselves and us telling our story. And we go into a process of working to heal that. All right. And so that's just that a bit there. I know we haven't gotten to, but I fear that we may be running out of time to because to deal with MSO. I mean, we deal a little bit with MSO, but there are other there is UBO. And so you got to guide me, Baba, in terms of time, because you know I can roll with it.
Yeah. We have about 5 to 7 minutes.
All
I
right, so
wanted to ask you to just touch a little bit of those pieces
okay.
for the sake of our story and to inspire some deeper research amongst
Okay.
our audience with the Black Wall Street, with the Tulsa piece, in terms of the story without the injected script. We know that the massacre is the injected script.
Right.
Give us some bullet points of that story, telling it from the inside out, reminding us of our power. Story of a loss, which is inspiration.
All right, great.
Yeah,
So
I love the fact that before you go there, another when we were in that session the other day, I was reminded of something my mother used to say all the time, and I never really put it in full context until recently. How Howard Cosell would always call those fights when Muhammad Ali was beating up a white man.
right.
And he would be calling the fights like, look at how this such and such just took that blow. And how he just took them 2 jabs to the head like a champion. And, you know what I'm saying? So we have even more up-to-date versions of this madness. I mean, we can look at it. That's a great assignment, Baba, just to give the whole family, just
That's right.
use some commercials or use some TV for 10 minutes. To see how that is still going on every day. But go ahead. I'm not going to cut you. I don't want to get in the way. I just wanted to mention that.
It's still going on every day, and which is why, again, I repeat, the story precedes the revolution. We're not the only ones that know that. Okay. If we're looking for labels, from a traditional psychological point of view, here's the this is what you're suffering from. This is what you suffer from. You have this, you have that, you have whatever. It's like, no. We need to know what to do. We need to know how to retell the stories. We need to know how the stories that we've been telling ourselves is contaminated and how to put something in its place. One of the first things to do, if you want to talk about Tulsa, is start with our work during captivity and our skill that we developed. And one of the most powerful things, I didn't get to do that the other week, but this is when I'm trying to get it in here quickly here, is I said, let's take 1 year of cotton crop. 1 year's cotton crop. The year is 1860. And and it's not hard to find, here's how much this cotton crop was for the southern states that made it. I said, okay, that's owed to us. Now, if we then do what Oscar Brown Jr. says, all right, 100 years or this 400 years of debt at 10% per 40 acres and per mule, see what he said. I said per these 100, this 1 year's cotton crop. Everybody, when you do the math, okay, the money we're owed is more than all the money that's in circulation right now. And every Black family in the United States would be owed more money than Jeff Bezos. Okay, when you do the math. Now, the reason I start them there is because I want them to understand the value of the labor. Now, that labor, because we were in captivity, that value went to other people, except for the value that we retained is the skill. And so after we won our freedom in 65, then we built the buildings down on Auburn Avenue. We built the buildings in the Haiti district called the Haiti district in Durham, North Carolina, which is the quote unquote official Black Wall Street. We built the buildings. Okay. We took our skill. And this is important because most people have an idea coming out of captivity that we had no skill. All right. We had tremendous skill. You mentioned agriculture. Give me a break. and all kinds. And we then start applying that skill to ourselves. When you realize that, then Tulsa or Sweet Auburn is no miracle. It's a continuation, right? And this is important because we have been again told many different stories. Then the we preferred shopping with each other. We built for each other. The land that was there was dedicated by a Black person for us, right? And we, as I said earlier, the advertisement for people to come was to bring your Winchester. We didn't have any delusion that we were just in America and we would be loved and it would be treated justly and fairly. We were coming from those places. We had just won the Civil War for ourselves. I mean, and I won our freedom. And so that level of preparation for how do you build in a hostile environment, okay, is critical. So we're going to tell the story. And it's critical for now. That's why I said it's 1877. If we look at what we did as opposed to lamenting that we have been deluding ourselves for 25 years, okay? And then from there, as you look at how we built under duress, then you bring in the weakened psychology of Europeans, okay? The weakened morality that would have them take something and claim it is theirs, that they would have rules of law that they would just throw in the trash can whenever it served them, and that they would have poor people, poor white people, jealous of Africans, and elite would have them do their bidding, okay? All right. Now, Black Reconstruction by W.B. Du Bois, he talks about it as a kind of foundation, which means you can't talk about dealing with capitalism and dealing with economics in the United States unless you also are dealing with the racial issue and also the psychology of Europeans, where poor white folks will, if you give them something to dominate, then they'll ignore that they're being oppressed. See, so we can't use that model to copy them and all of that. But so again, that's a key piece there. And you got me going deep into the weeds because I'm really flipping back into how I really teach that course in more detail. And then when you deal with, when I've had students talk about the loss and how do you have a loss? How do you tell a story about a loss? The students observed there was ancestral veneration. There was a focus on what we were fighting for. We were defending communities that we had built against duress with our bare hands. We were defending our success. We were defending our wives and our brothers and our sisters. And we had taken the resources that and the information that we learned from serving in and fighting with the French in the World War I to apply it to militarily defending our people here, so that we then show our, again, use of resources and using those resources in service of our people. And as we fought valiantly, okay, as we lost that battle, because when folks got in planes and start dropping the incendiary devices, then we had to leave the front lines to go back to our homes and get our folks out of there and to take care of our folks in that kind of way. And we sacrifice for our people and for what we built in a very powerful way. And one young lady was telling the story because I asked her, the assignment is you tell the story that's inspiring to your peers. And so she told the story, and in the story, a Black young man was fighting, and his brother, his younger brother, and then she told how the first thing, when she found her father, the character, she saw her father bloodied and whatever, and she just fainted. And I said, "Excuse me, it's too much Hollywood, baby, too much Hollywood. Ain't no Black woman gonna see their daddy, okay, and been out of shape and bleeding and whatever, and faint. I'm sorry, they're gonna be coming there seeing what I can do." And so that was the first kind of correction. It really was life-changing for her to realize how much the story that she was creating had been influenced by the movies that she'd seen. Okay. And then the next piece, when she was writing, and the young boy was leading his younger brother. They were need to get out of town, but they had to fight. And so she showed that older brother being riddled with bullets. And I said, no, 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 no. Death is implied. Okay. What is dramatized is our fight and our will. Okay. So she went back and rewrote the story. And they were cornered. The older brothers told the younger brother to go ahead, you got to go. And he faced these folks. And the younger brother, the focus wasn't on the older brother who's fighting. The younger brother is doing what he's told. He's going away. He knows the sound of his brother's gun, and he hears his brother shooting. Pow, 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 pow. And he hears when those shots ring no more. And he takes his brother sacrificing his life for him on into the freedom that he was seeking. Okay, so there are many ways that we have to retell our stories. Okay, and this injected racial scripts have not been taught specifically in a class. It's what's been caught. Okay, and this is where Nana Before's work is important. The socialization is critical. That's how it kind of seeps in without you knowing it, without you seeing it. And we have to have instructors to have us know how to tell a story. These students' lives change when they learn to tell a story about a loss without lying about it, but in ways that are inspirational.
I can only imagine. Thank you so much for sharing of yourself, your wisdom, of your love, your heart for your people, Baba, in this moment and just throughout your lifetime. And we're so grateful that you're still here with us in this flesh, in this physical realm. That we can celebrate you and continue to support. I remember Nana Fukia taught us such a profound, you say it's a proverb, it's marching orders, as proverbs are in their indigenous way. Here, Simba Simbi, hold up that which holds you up. Simba Simbi.
Simba Simbi.
Simba Simbi. And so this is what the reality is. Family, we have always been held up by great pillars of light and love, which manifests itself in so many different ways. And part of the process, going forward to Nana Carver, I think for me, Baba Wakesa, one of the biggest principles that I've learned in my journey in this time as a man, coming from boyhood to manhood and all of that, and dealing with part of the reality that we're facing with in this colonial world as it exists right now, that being the dominant script that leads in people's mind is just what the patriarchy, the whole sickness of patriarchy has done to our world. And so, in a really practical way, I think of what Nana Carver brought back to us, entering into a scene that was so full of first of all, greed and disrespect for the mama. That's what big ag comes from. That's what the monocrop system comes from. It comes from take, and never give. As I say all the time, imagine going to grandmama's house for all the family holidays and never going to grandmama to see if you could rub her feet or if you could make her something. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Or braid her hair or something. Just taking and not giving. So Nana Carver, in short, dealing with this so-called slave economy, where it's about, okay, well, cotton is king, and to 2024, cotton is still the most expensive commodity as far as I know on the market. So Booker T. Washington and them were having a conversation. He and Booker T. Washington were having a conversation, and as the story goes, Booker T. Washington asked him to give some tips to share with the farmers in Tuskegee, in the surrounding area that would help them to invigorate their crops. He's like, we gotta rotate the crops.
Right.
And I'm imagining Booker T. Washington said, man, you gonna get us lynched. The cotton is still king. And that's when Nana Carver gave that often quoted speech about, or utterance about, all my adult life, Every morning in my adult life, I've been waking up at 4 in the morning and I walk into the woods,
Hmm.
and there God talks to me, teaches me the secret life of the plants. You know?
Right.
So I'm dramatizing it, and the fullness of it for me. One of the things is he taught people how to give back to the earth, and
Right.
that's the whole Simba Simbi. You know, give, we hold up that which holds you up. This is our
Mo,
mother. This is not a
mo,
factory.
mo,
This is this is our mother who's always nurturing us,
mo.
who's always sustaining us. You know,
Right.
and we just taking and not giving, and that's why the crops are failing. And to this day, Tuskegee is known in some circles. I haven't done the research myself. It's known in some circles to have some of the most fertile soil in the whole world outside of the Nile Valley.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
You know,
Yeah. Okay.
you
It
know what I'm
makes,
saying?
yeah. Well, that's, hold up what that which holds us up. Absolutely. It's powerful. Uh,
Seriously, and today the subject that our point of focus in practically bringing that piece of ancient wisdom that Nana Fuka reminds us of, Baba Wakesa, Olatunji Matsumoyo, a real lover of his people. And I don't know a higher
there's none.
way that I can, from my
There's
heart,
none. There's none.
describe him. You know,
You nailed it.
you know, what I'm saying?
You nailed
You
it.
know, Baba, thank you so much
Thank
for
you. Thank
being
you.
you.
Thank you for this. Thank you for this
And much love to Mama Fia and your whole family, who I know is such a huge part of supporting that work and a huge integral part of that work in the first place. You know,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
we're grateful for the example. We're looking forward to partying with you this strong end.
All right.
Again, give the phone number and website, any
All right.
information.
Phone, phone number, but you can, if you Instagram or Facebook, you put Wekesa is 70. That is WEKESA. There's an event that will come up. And if you email Wekesa, WEKESA at gmail.com. I'll slow that down. WEKESA at gmail.com. Then just email us directly, and phone number 404-432-9958 or 404-201-2356. And we're all over the internet. If you put Wekesa Maximoyo, if you can put them two together, then we'll come up and you'll be able to get to us. I certainly would love to see y'all in the place. We're going to be at the Clarkson Community Center, and with dinner and partying and words and dancing. So look forward to see you. Thank you so much, my brother, for all you do and all you have done and will do for our community. Peace.
Much love.
Much love.
Family, continue to tune into yourself. This is the Global Drumbeat and Ancestral Rock. Continue to hold up that which holds you up. Continue to tune into yourself. The two are irreplaceable, or not irreplaceable. That's not the word I'm looking for. They're inseparable. Is the word I'm looking for. They can't be separated. You know? We can't pour from an empty cup. We want to thank Baba Wakesa for joining us. I want to also remind you, of course, WRFG Atlanta is this way, and you can hear Baba Wakesa on a Thursday afternoon because we're listener supported. We don't go to the enemies of our people for support, because old time people used to say, "Who paid the piper, call the tune." All right, it's simple as that. So continue to support community radio, and we thank you for tuning in with us this afternoon.